If this is your first year teaching, or if you're going to be starting teaching, here are some things you need to know. Now, to be honest with you, some of this you may not want to hear, but this is stuff I wish I heard and knew when I started teaching 21 years ago.
I am ready. I am so ready.
You are not alone. Now, let me say this again. You are not alone. I know it feels like it so many times. If you think about the reality of this, as a teacher, we can spend 5 hours in our classroom with no other adults. Not many other professions out there are you by yourself with not many other adults around. Now, Chris, of course, you see them at the teacher meetings and maybe in the lunchroom. That's only for small little snippets. But the reality is, for about 5 hours a day, you are alone with these kids. And if you are struggling in the classroom, if there are behaviors problems going on, and you're having trouble implementing the lesson, and students seem to be out of control, and then you're just feeling overwhelmed by all the grading and everything else, it is easy to think it's got to be me. It's easy to think that, oh my gosh, no one else is going through this. What is wrong with me? And I'm telling you right now, doing this 21 years, I've talked to, I don't know, hundreds of different teachers. I help different teachers, first year, second, third year teachers. And I'm telling you right now, you are not alone. Everybody is struggling. Even us seasoned teachers are struggling many times. So with that in mind, just know you are not alone and that we can figure anything out together. Your goal for the first year teaching should be survival. That's it. It's kind of sad, isn't it? I'm not sure if that's depressing or not. But in all honesty, that should be your goal, is survival. I mean, I know you've gone through school and 4 years and then 2 years, and who knows, maybe you're still going to school and you have all these great ideas and you're excited about teaching these kids. But when you're actually in the classroom, actually in the trenches, reality hits real quick that it's sometimes far from what you were expecting. And it's very overwhelming. Once again, you're feeling very alone. And so your goal for that first year should be survival. I cannot tell you how frustrating it is to hear administration. Oh, this drives me nuts. This is going on. All throughout my year, I've seen this, where they focus on different things. So, for example, they may focus on academics. We would like everybody to use this academic language. We like to have students do this together. We like to have, standards met right here. And they give you all these ideas of what they want. For your first year, 2, 3, you can't even get there. That is not even a possibility for 99% of us the first year, 2 or 3. There's absolutely no way that we're going to be able to cover all the state standards when we can't even get little Johnny to sit down or little Susie to be quiet. You can't. You just can't. And for anybody else to have more expectation from you than just survival the first year is wrong. And so with that, now, please understand, you're still going to have to play the game. You're still going to play the game. You still have to show up to the meetings. You're still going to have to implement some things they're implementing. They tell you to implement this or write this on the board. You're still going to have to do that. You got to go through the motions. Got to play the game. But internally, you should know to yourself, hey, man, my goal this first year is just to make it through. Make it through with my hair intact. Hopefully no more gray hair. Hopefully I don't lose any hair or my sanity. That should be goal for the first year. It is. What other job is there? What other job is there? As soon as you get your credential, boom, they throw you in there. Nothing. Even at McDonald's, you get hired. There's somebody training you in McDonald's, right? How to use a fry machine and flip ham. They even have that. But for teachers, you get your credential. All right, there you go. Start. That is so unrealistic and unfair. So, first year, survival. That should be the goal. It is not you. It is the kids. Right? Going back to what I mentioned before, so many times you're by yourself, it's hard to imagine that anybody else is having these problems. And the internal dialogue many times is, what's wrong with me? I remember my first year teaching. That is how I felt. I felt alone, and what is wrong with me? I didn't understand it. These students, I spent all my time lesson planning and creating these great lessons, and I was so excited about it. And I go to implement, and these kids just do not listen. And now they're not listening, they're disrespectful, they're defiant, and the list goes on and on. And I think to myself, what's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? And the reality is this: it is not you, it is the kids. Now, when I say that, let me kind of phrase it this way. The behavior of, I would say, 90% of students can be very bad. Very disrespectful, not working, defiant, disruptive, complaint, you name it, right? 90% of students can easily fall into that category. And so if you're coming with the idea that every student's going to be excited about learning, it's just not going to happen. It is them and not you. Now I'm going to throw a little caveat here. Here we go, a caveat. The good news is you actually will find out that you do have control of much of their behavior. Now we'll say that for some other video. We won't go into depths of that. But for now, if you feel discouraged and you're like, what's wrong with you? Just know you are exactly where 90% of the teachers are at when they first come into this profession. But the good news is, hang in there, and once you start picking up some stuff, it actually does get better. But we'll save that for another video. There is no work-life balance. Oh, please don't come at me for this one. Please don't shoot me for this one. I mean, man, there's nothing more than we want than work-life balance. But the reality is, the first year, 2 or 3, you're not going to find it. You are not going to find it. Now, there are things you can put in place. Trust me, there are things to put in place to make your life easier. There are things to put in life to find yourself a little less stressed, to find yourself a little bit more peaceful. But man, this job is going to take it out of you. For the first couple of years, this job is going to wear you down. Going back to what we talked about, almost every job you kind of have this training period. But teaching, yeah, not so much. You get thrown right to the wolves from the very beginning. And the other thing to keep in mind is this. I'm not sure if you've ever heard the 10,000 rule. It takes 10,000 hours to become proficient or master or really good at something. So if you're a teacher, what you're going to find, and I did the math on this. That's kind of how nerd I am. I did the math. It's about 7 years. It's going to take you about 7 years of teaching before you become really proficient or really good at teaching. Now that may sound like a long time. And for me, that's pretty much right on what it took. But each year gets a little bit better. And each year as it gets a little bit better, you get a little bit better. And eventually get to the point where you feel comfortable in the classroom. I mean, all the way comfortable in the classroom. But that happens over time. But as you're putting those hours in, you're going to find yourself out of balance. You're always told, don't take work home with you. But as a teacher, I mean, I would love to tell you don't do that. But realistically speaking, the first year, 2, 3, as you're building up your collections of lessons, as you're learning things, as you're noting things, as you're changing things, you're probably going to have to do that. Now, don't go to the extreme. Here's the thing. It's a fine thing. You got to be able to do it to the point where you don't get burned out. So you got to find how far you can push yourself without getting burned out. But a realistic expectation is this, that as a first year, second, third year teacher, you are going to have to take stuff home and you're going to have to work on things. And the other part of it is this, that you actually might like doing that. Some people do. I did for a while there too as well, right? And the other part of it, even beyond that, even beyond the planning and the grading, is this. You get to a point where you can't not think about what's going on in the classroom. You'll be at home taking a shower and you'll start thinking about, oh, I should have done this today. Or I wonder if I do a lesson like this tomorrow. Or, hey, I wonder if I said this to the student, if they would have responded differently. It's hard to shut that off. And it's going to be like that for a little bit. So if it is, do not beat yourself up. Do the best you can to try to balance it all without getting to the point you're burned out. But first couple years, just know you're going to feel out of balance. You are going to be tired. Oh, man. Now, kind of go along with what we just talked about, that balance thing. It's hard to find the balance. You're going to be taking a lot of stuff with you. You're going to find yourself feeling like sometimes you have no real time to recuperate. But the only really, really good thing about teaching, of course, is we have those breaks. And so those are the moments, I'm telling you, when teachers come to the breaks, man, you're going to find yourself just cherishing those breaks. And that's what's going to give you the energy to keep going. But as teachers, it is very tiring. Like I mentioned, it's hard to turn it off your thinking. It's hard to turn off, planning, think about how you respond to students and everything else of that sort. So it's hard to turn that part off. And that's going to add to your tiredness. But I remember there's only the 2 most tiring times in my life. The first one was having a newborn. Oh, now, if you have kids or if you're going to have a kid and you know this, a newborn it's going to wear you out. I remember my first daughter, she was having a period of time there as a little baby. She kept crying. Me and my wife were up all night. We're taking shifts. We're just worn out. We were literally like falling asleep, standing and sitting as we're rocking our little girl. Hey man, I was never more tired than I was having a newborn. But the second most tired I've ever been is when I was a new teacher. So just know that teacher tired is a real thing, and you're going to feel it. But when those breaks come, that is when you need to find a time to re-energize. Give yourself time to get better. Give yourself time. Be patient with the process. Be patient with yourself. Give yourself time to start learning and start building upon 1 month to the next month, from 1 year to the other year. Now, I don't know if this is going to be good news for you or bad news for you, but here's the statistics I always talk about, and it goes like this, that 44% of the teachers will quit by year 5. 44%. That means almost half the teachers quit by year 5. That just tells you how hard the job is. That just tells you how stressful it is, how much you're going to be out of balance, how tired you're going to be, and you add all of those things together, it is hard to stay in the game. Very hard to stay in the game. But here's the great news that I get from that. If you're able to stay in the game and build upon 1 year from the next, 1 year from the next, you start getting a little more energy, you start getting a little more excited, you start getting a little more history behind you, you start getting a little more experience. By year 5 or so, things start to plateau out. And by year 5, things start to plateau out. And pretty much from year 5 to retirement, it stays pretty even. And so what that tells me is this. The first 5 years are extremely hard in teaching. Be patient with yourself. Give yourself time. But if you make it past year 5 and you get towards that 7 mark, where you really start really getting good, that is the place you are going to love as a teacher. So with that said, give yourself a little bit of time, make it to year 5, learn from your mistakes, build upon your strengths, learn from your weaknesses, develop those, and stay in the game. And by year 5, 6, 7, man, it is going to be a great experience for you.